Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a journey into a much slower world, ancient Greece. But we're not marching into battle, sculpting marble gods, or debating democracy in the agora. No, tonight we're after something far more elusive. Chill jobs. The kind of roles where the pace is gentle, the stress is minimal, and getting fired involves something hilarious, like mistaking sacred chickens for dinner. Imagine yourself under a sprawling olive tree, sunlight filtering through dusty green leaves. The warm air smells faintly of thyme and pressed fruit. There's a dull thump of distant sandals on packed earth, but mostly peace. You're here to watch the trees. That's it. Just make sure goats don't start a buffet line. And maybe, if you're extra motivated, pick up a few fallen branches. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is for you right now. Always love seeing how far and wide we drift across the map. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're hired as an olive grove watcher, one of the most notoriously relaxing jobs in the ancient countryside. Your employer is a stout old man named Cleon who says two things when you show up. Don't lose the donkey, and don't let the goats eat the olives. Then he disappears for the rest of the week. And so, you find your rhythm. The olive trees don't need constant tending. They're sturdy, ancient things, some older than your entire extended family. You walk among them, sandals crunching over dry leaves. The wind sighs through the branches. A cicada starts its slow summer song. You settle against the trunk of a tree that leans just the right amount. And soon, your eyes are heavy. It's almost spiritual, almost. Mainstream fact: olive cultivation was central to the Greek economy. Oil was used for cooking, lamps, athletics, rituals, you name it. Every estate had groves, and every grove needed watchers, but not highly trained watchers. Just someone with basic goat-scaring skills and a tolerance for boredom. Fringe tidbit: some groves were believed to be protected by dryads, tree spirits. If something went wrong, it wasn't just your fault. It might be the dryad's revenge, which is kind of a nice excuse when you doze off and a herd of goats eats half the lower branches. One day, you're napping in your favorite spot when you hear a distinct crunch, not from your tree, farther off. You sit up slowly, brush olive leaves from your face, and spot the goats. At least 6 of them, maybe more. They're trotting in a little horde toward the main grove, heads low, eyes locked on a low-hanging branch like it's the last salad bar in Athens. You leap up. Your stick, your mighty goat deterrent, is wedged between 2 roots where you left it yesterday. You run, flailing your arms. The goats pause. One stares at you blankly. You wave the stick. You shout something vaguely threatening about sacrifice and stew. Most of them scatter. One doesn't. One goat, brown, stubborn, with a slightly lopsided horn, locks eyes with you, lowers its head, and proceeds to nibble directly from the tree. You're not proud of what happens next. There's yelling. There's an accidental trip. You roll downhill and land in a patch of thyme. The goat watches, then it poops. Later that afternoon, Cleon returns unexpectedly. You're brushing leaves from your tunic and trying to look composed. He notices the chewed branches. He sighs loudly. I told you about the goats. You nod solemnly. This one had a grudge. He squints, then grins. You should have cursed it in Homeric verse. You're not fired, but you're also not praised. Your pay is slightly reduced. Goat tax, Cleon calls it, and you're given a bell to hang from the most aggressive goat's neck. If it rings too much, that's on you. Historians still argue whether olive grove watchers were formally employed or simply assigned from larger estates, but one thing's clear: someone had to do it. And they usually had plenty of time for naps, songs, or daydreams about opening a philosophical school that required 0 students. You finish your shift sitting beneath the tree again, munching on a bit of dried fig. The sun slides low. The goat bell chimes once, lazily, in the distance. You smile. You've earned that nap this time. You wake to the scent of something warm, humid, and slightly medicinal. Steam curls in lazy spirals through a mosaic-tiled corridor. Somewhere ahead, you hear the slosh of water and the clink of a bronze strigil being tapped against a tub's rim. Welcome to your next relaxing gig. Public bath attendant. Now, don't let the word attendant fool you. You're not running laps around shouting patrons or scrubbing floors until they shine like Apollo's forehead. No, your main job is to manage towels, stoke the occasional brazier, maybe pour some oil, and nod appreciatively when men with more abs than sense flex in the mirror-polished copper. Bonus points if you can keep a straight face when someone claims their ankle sprain is divine punishment for overtraining. The bathhouse is in the center of town, nestled between the gymnasium and the agora. It's a tranquil spot, mostly. Patrons arrive in waves, depending on the season, and whether it's a festival day. Today, the air is slow and sleepy, the kind of afternoon where the sunlight paints drowsy rectangles on the marble. You greet your first guest, an old merchant with knobby knees and a cough like a startled goose. He tips you a few obols and heads straight for the warm pool, muttering about his back. You follow quietly, adjusting a water jar by the brazier and tossing in a pinch of myrrh-scented herbs. The steam hisses in response. You bow dramatically. He ignores you. Mainstream fact: Greek bathhouses were not just for bathing. They were social hubs, places to relax, debate, plan business deals, or simply show off a new beard trim. Some even had libraries attached, where you could finish your soak with a scroll of Hesiod or Herodotus. Fringe tidbit: certain bathhouses employed dedicated scrubbers who specialized in exfoliating with sand and oil. These men took great pride in their work and occasionally held contests. Who could make a back gleam like a fresh amphora? Glory awaited. Your job doesn't involve scrubbing. It involves presence. You drift like a helpful shadow, replacing towels, pouring ladles of warm water, and occasionally fanning someone who claims they might melt dramatically if left unbothered for more than 5 minutes. You've even mastered the silent eyebrow raise of bathhouse diplomacy. Part judgment, part curiosity, part, please don't talk to me about your nephew's wrestling injury again. Everything flows smoothly until the poet arrives. He bursts into the bathhouse like Dionysus on a deadline, robes askew, sandals mismatched, scroll tucked under one arm. He demands a private pool. He demands extra oil. He demands an audience. You point toward the small plunge basin in the back, the one most guests avoid because it's half-shaded and mysteriously always smells of fennel. He nods. Perfect ambiance for tragedy. You bring him a small amphora of lightly warmed olive oil. He sniffs it. Too rustic, he says. You bring another. Too urban. A third. Now this smells like broken dreams. He accepts it joyously. For the next hour, he performs his new play from the plunge pool, steam wafting around his wild gestures as he half sings, half yells lines about unfaithful winds and doomed oracles. One towel falls into the water. A sandal flies across the room. A statue of Apollo gets a dramatic splash. Eventually, the gymnasiarch walks in. He stares at the poet. He stares at you. Why is this man declaiming at my foot basin? You shrug. He claims the acoustics are inspirational. The poet, still mid-monologue, raises his amphora like a chalice and shouts, Do not silence the soul. The gymnasiarch sighs. You're cleaning that up. You nod. Naturally, you're not fired technically, but you are reassigned to the outer lounge, where your new primary duty is folding towels. Quietly. Still, not all is lost. You bring a small jug of watered wine with you, settle beside the statue of Hygeia, and listen to the gentle hum of contented bathers drifting in and out of the inner chambers. Your hands work methodically, folding, stacking, folding again. The scent of warm oil lingers. Someone starts humming a soft tune in the caldarium. You hum along without thinking. Historians still argue whether bath attendants were viewed as servants or respected workers in Greek society. Some inscriptions honor them by name, others mention them only as background fixtures. Either way, it's work that lets you keep your ears open and your feet warm. And really, who needs job security when you've got access to a bottomless amphora of eucalyptus steam? As the sun dips low and your stack of towels reaches a respectable pyramid, you stretch your legs and lean back against the wall. The poet has finally gone. Apollo's statue is drying. Your shift is over. You take one last deep breath, and you don't even smell fish. The next morning greets you with the chirp of birds, the creak of shutters, and the scent of freshly baked barley bread wafting from a nearby oven. Your sandals slap lightly against sun-warmed cobblestones as you head toward your newest gig, one so low pressure it might qualify as a meditative experience. You're now a temple incense wafting assistant, a role as gentle as it sounds. You don't mix the incense, you don't light the fires, you're not in charge of the actual offerings. No, your job is far simpler. Wave the scent in the right direction, slowly, repeatedly, gracefully, preferably without sneezing mid-prayer. The temple is small, dedicated to Hestia, goddess of hearth and home. Tucked behind the main square, its marble columns are pale and slender, and vines creep lazily up one side. Inside, everything glows with soft golden light. Oil lamps flicker. A bowl of fruit sits beside the altar. The priest nods as you enter, already adjusting the wick on the eternal flame. You're on breeze duty today, he says. You take your tool, a long-handled fan made of palm fronds stitched with dyed thread, and move to your post. Behind the brazier, to the left of the central statue, angled just right so the smoke drifts past the altar without smothering the visitors. You practice the motion. Slow arc, pause, reverse. Like painting invisible circles. Mainstream fact? Incense played a major role in Greek ritual life. Burnt offerings were believed to carry prayers to the gods on scented smoke. Different blends meant different things. Myrrh for mourning, frankincense for honor, cinnamon for celebration. Fringe tidbit? Some temples used incense strategically to cover up less divine odors, like animal sacrifices that had been sitting a bit too long. Wafting assistants might also serve as impromptu air fresheners during long festivals. Your station today is beside a low-burning censer, filled with a blend that smells like orange peel, cedar, and something faintly spicy, probably cassia. You move the fan gently. The smoke curls upward in a delicate spiral. It feels oddly satisfying. A handful of townspeople shuffle in, murmuring their prayers. One leaves a garland of flowers. Another places a flat stone at the base of the altar. You nod respectfully, though you have no idea what either offering means. Your job is to keep the air flowing and the vibe peaceful. And it is peaceful, until the sneezer arrives. You spot her instantly, a middle-aged woman with a long woolen shawl, red eyes, and a look of doom. She tiptoes inside, takes one sniff of the incense, and unleashes a sneeze so thunderous it rattles the fruit bowl. The priest jumps. The flame flickers. You freeze. She sniffles, sneezes again. Sorry. Lovely blend, she says, wiping her nose on the shawl. Always makes me weep for Hestia. You try to waft discreetly. Less smoke, more air. She sneezes again. The brazier wheezes. The priest sighs. Later, he pulls you aside. Perhaps less wafting when the sneezy ones arrive. You nod solemnly. Divine moderation. Still not fired. You spend the rest of your shift perfecting the art of invisible wafting. You adjust your stance. You swap hands. You even try fanning from the side to direct smoke away from sensitive noses. It's a dance of air and patience. At one point, a visiting official enters, trailing servants. He bows, deposits a small bag of coins at the altar, and pauses in front of you. That's excellent wafting, he says. Controlled, but inspired. You nod modestly. You do your best not to fan harder from pride. Historians still argue whether incense wafting was a dedicated position or just a task rotated among temple aides. Some suggest it had ritual significance. Others think it was simply for ambiance, a bit like spiritual stagecraft. Either way, you've made it your craft. The sun creeps across the temple floor. Shadows stretch. You complete your final pass, long, gentle, practiced, and step back as the priest extinguishes the outer braziers. Well done, he says. No sneezes for the last hour. Progress, you whisper. You leave the temple quietly, the scent of cedar still clinging to your tunic, your hands relaxed for the first time in days. You didn't carry heavy loads, you didn't run errands, you just moved the air, and the gods seemed okay with that. You pause on the temple steps, close your eyes, and take a long breath in. Frankincense and calm. Today's job involves no smoke, no sweat, and, if you do it right, very little movement at all. You're now working as a sculpture stand-in. Yes, that's a real role. Yes, you're getting paid for it. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. This gig begins in the courtyard of a sculptor's workshop, nestled near the foot of the Acropolis. Marble dust coats everything like powdered sugar, and the clang of hammer on chisel echoes rhythmically from inside. You duck under a linen curtain and find yourself staring at a half-finished statue, something heroic, muscular, and very, very nude. Ah, the sculptor says, peering at you over a measuring rod. You'll do. Mainstream fact? Many Greek sculptors used live models to capture anatomical realism, particularly when working on gods, athletes, and the occasional unusually buff philosopher. These models were often paid by the hour and only needed to hold the same pose for about 20 minutes at a time. Fringe tidbit? Some workshops placed olive oil on the model's skin to study how light curved along muscles. Others had assistants oil the marble itself so clients could preview the final sheen. Your task today is simple. Stand still. Arms raised, chest out, slight turn of the head. Think noble hero staring into the distance, but with a mild squint because the sun is right in your eyes. The pose is manageable at first. You're standing on a smooth stone platform, surrounded by half-finished torsos and an impressive number of decapitated heads. Someone brings you a small stool for breaks. Someone else hands you a fig. It's oddly serene, this work. The sculptor murmurs as he moves, occasionally squinting at your ribs like they've insulted him. You resist the urge to flinch every time the chisel strikes the stone. Then things get weird. An apprentice trips over a hammer, knocks a bucket of water onto a marble foot, and slips again trying to clean it. The sculptor growls. You twitch. The sculptor sighs. You twitched. Sorry, you whisper. You were majestic for 13 minutes. Try again. Round 2 goes better. You refocus. You breathe slowly. You imagine yourself as a statue already carved, unbothered by dust or deadlines. And it works, until a fly lands directly on your nose. Historians still argue whether Greek sculptors exaggerated muscle tone in their statues or if their models were truly that fit. Some inscriptions suggest competitions among models, who could hold still the longest, flex most impressively, or keep a straight face while a goat wandered through the studio. You try to flex now, subtly. You want your statue version to have respectable shoulders. But then the sculptor says, "Don't flex. Just exist." You unflex. You exist. After a while, you begin to feel oddly proud. The sculpture starts taking form. Rough at first, then gradually smoother. You recognize the line of your neck, the tilt of your jaw. There's something surreal about seeing yourself rendered in stone. Slightly idealized, of course. The sculptor has generously reduced your stomach by half a fig's worth. At lunch, you get a break. Bread, olives, a slice of cheese, and the quiet companionship of marble arms stacked against the wall. One of the apprentices offers you a jar of water. He says you're the calmest model they've ever had. You thank him, then accidentally knock over a small bust with your elbow. It shatters. The sculptor returns, surveys the shards, and raises one eyebrow. "Perhaps you'll model for Medusa next time," he says dryly. You're not fired, but you are moved outside for the rest of the day, where your job becomes pose under fig tree so I can sketch your outline, which is fine. You get shade. The breeze is warm. The tree hums with bees. You hold a simpler pose this time, seated, elbow on knee, hand at chin. Thoughtful, enduring, wondering how long you can go without needing to scratch your shoulder. A friend of the sculptor wanders by and mistakes you for a real statue. He praises the posture. You don't blink. He drops a coin at your feet. You blink. The illusion breaks. Still, that's a free coin. By the end of the shift, the sculptor pats your shoulder. "Not bad," he says. "You made it through without turning to stone yourself." You nod, collect your sandals, and make your way down the hill. Your muscles ache in strange places. Your arms feel like they're still locked in mid-heroism. But your mind? Surprisingly relaxed. You didn't move much. And for once, that was the point. You wake to the sound of gentle footsteps and low murmurs. Your next post is more library than battlefield. Today, you're entering the serene world of an Athenian scroll copyist's assistant. No chiseling, no lifting, no temple smoke. Just ink, parchment, and the sound of quills scratching in unison. You've traded the scent of olive oil and sweat for the faint musk of old papyrus and candle wax. Not bad. You walk into a small, sunlit room tucked behind the local archives. Wooden slats cover the windows to keep the parchment cool and the birds out. A row of scribes is already bent over their workbenches, faces scrunched with concentration, styluses twitching like nervous insects. You take your place at the side table. Your job isn't to copy the texts. That's a specialist's task. No, you're here to prepare the scrolls and supplies. Think of it as ancient office support, but with more charcoal dust and fewer lunch breaks. Mainstream fact: in ancient Greece, scroll copying was a meticulous, respected job. Scribes were trained to write clearly, consistently, and with minimal errors. In Athens, major works, like those of Homer, Hesiod, or Aeschylus, were frequently copied for schools, libraries, and wealthy patrons. Fringe tidbit: some copyists believed that smudging a word from a famous text brought bad luck. Others buried faulty scrolls like failed spells. There's at least one recorded case of a scribe refusing to copy a certain poem on account of it angering his wrist. Your task begins with parchment prep. You unroll fresh sheets, weigh them down with smooth stones, and gently scrape the surface with pumice to remove imperfections. The texture must be just right, not too rough, not too oily. The head scribe, an older man with astonishing eyebrows and a voice like a winded owl, shows you how to mix the ink. A bit of soot, water, a few drops of wine for consistency. You're not sure if he means the ink or his mood. Then comes quill sharpening. You learn how to carve the reed tips with precision, then test them on scrap parchment. The key is balance, a line that's neither too thick nor too faint. One apprentice jokes that a bad quill is like a drunk oracle, unreliable and full of blots. You keep quiet, mostly because your first two quills look like angry snakes. The room is quiet, but not silent. There's a steady rhythm to it all, the flutter of scrolls, the clink of ink pots, the occasional yawn muffled behind a sleeve. Your job may not be glamorous, but it's oddly satisfying. You arrange scrolls, you organize inkstones, you fetch more parchment when someone gestures like their life depends on it. And then the hiccuper arrives. He's a junior scribe with a chronic case of post-lunch hiccups. Every fifth line, hic. It echoes through the chamber like a tiny war horn. The head scribe glares. The hiccuper looks stricken. You hand him a cup of water. He drinks. Hic. You try distracting him. You whisper, think of goats. Hic. Underwater goats. Hic. Wait, what? Hic. The scrolls shake slightly from suppressed laughter. Still not fired. Historians still argue whether Athenian copyists had union-like protections or were just overworked perfectionists. Some evidence suggests scribes were given bonuses for particularly long or error-free jobs. Others believe the real reward was simply not being whipped by a grammarian. Late in the day, you're asked to help bind a finished scroll. The parchment is rolled, tied with a thin string, and labeled with a red wax stamp. It's heavy in your hands, dense with story, thought, and careful scratches from people who take their time seriously. You carry the finished scroll to the front desk. The man behind the desk, who has the posture of a melted stool, nods approvingly. Another one for the shelf, he says, placing it among dozens of others labeled with tiny clay tags. Before you leave, the head scribe offers you a dried fig and says, steady hands, quiet feet. You'd make a decent scribe one day. You beam, then nearly trip over a footstool. Perhaps not quite yet, he adds. You walk home with your tunic slightly smudged with ink and your fingers faintly blue. You smell like parchment and charcoal. You feel calm. There were no drums today, no oars, no awkward statues or sneezing priests. Just you, a reed pen, and a room full of stories waiting to be copied. And in a way, that's its own kind of peace. Today, your shift begins in the shade of swaying olive trees, surrounded by honeybees, chirping cicadas, and the soft crunch of sandals on dry grass. You're working as a garden temple caretaker, not for some grand shrine with flocks of priests and columns taller than a centaur's ego. No, this is a small, rural temple, modest but lovely. Nestled on a hill just outside Athens, it's dedicated to Hestia, goddess of hearth and home, the kind of place villagers visit with quiet offerings and farmers nod to as they pass by with carts full of onions. Your duties? Keep it pleasant, keep it peaceful, keep the bees from building nests under the altar again. Mainstream fact: many small temples in Greece were cared for by appointed stewards or local volunteers, often older women or younger men too unthreatening to need a spear. These caretakers handled basic maintenance, cleaning the shrine, restocking oil lamps, refreshing offerings, and raking the temple paths. Fringe tidbit: Some temples trained birds to peck at crumbs and clear the floor while caretakers swept. Others kept goats nearby, not for sacrifice, but because they trimmed the grass better than any broom. You start your morning sweeping flower petals from the steps. The broom is made of bound twigs and a lot of hope. Every gust of wind undoes your progress. It becomes a meditative rhythm. Sweep, sigh, sweep again. Inside the temple, the air is cool and dim. The altar is simple: a stone block, a brass bowl for incense, and a weathered statue of Hestia herself. She has the serene smile of someone who's never stubbed her toe on an amphora. You light the morning oil, pressed from olives harvested 2 hills over, and whisper the daily prayer. You don't know all the words, but you say them anyway. It's the tone that counts. Then you refill the votive jars. One contains barley, one honey, one a collection of tiny carved animals someone's been anonymously leaving for weeks. A dog, a turtle, a dolphin with a slightly smug expression. You sweep again. A farmer stops by, leaves a small basket of figs, and nods to you like you're the neighborhood god. You nod back, like maybe you are. The afternoon is warm, but not cruel. Bees hum lazily around the rosemary bushes. You pour water at the base of a fig tree that's been leaning dramatically for days. You whisper encouragement. It leans anyway. At one point, a goat wanders in. You stare at it. It stares at you. You compromise. Half the garden for chewing, none of the altar cloths. Historians still argue whether temple caretakers were considered holy by association or just glorified janitors. Some inscriptions describe them as guardians of calm. Others refer to their duties as servile but noble. You prefer keeper of peaceful vibes. Midday, you rest in the garden bench under a canopy of grapevines. Someone has left a loaf of fresh bread beside it, probably from the baker's apprentice who always blushes when you walk by. You eat slowly, letting crumbs fall for the temple birds. You hear 2 women approach, one old, one younger, probably a granddaughter. They murmur prayers, place flowers, and light a second lamp. You keep your distance, just visible enough to remind them someone's tending this sacred space. Later, you climb the rear stairs to dust the roof tiles. You find a cat sleeping between 2 columns, paws tucked under like a loaf of bread. You leave it alone. Cats are always welcome in temples, even when they knock over offerings. You think about how calm everything feels here. No rowing, no shouting, just sunlight, dust, and the occasional breeze through olive leaves. You scrub moss from the back wall. You replace a cracked votive dish with one a potter donated last week. You gently remove a lizard from the herb shelf. It flicks its tail at you in offense. Before sunset, a merchant stops by. He places a small coin at the altar, then turns to you. "It's cleaner here than my own house," he says. "Can I hire you?" You smile, politely decline. There's something sacred about this gig, not just the gods, but the stillness, the way it demands little but rewards you with everything: fresh air, quiet, and figs when you're lucky. As evening settles, you light the dusk incense. It's made of thyme, sage, and something vaguely floral that tickles your nose. The smoke rises in thin curls, drifting into the painted beams above. You stand in the doorway, watching shadows stretch across the hills. The goats have gone home. The bees sleep. Even the temple cat has curled into a statue-like blob of serenity. You tuck your broom behind the altar. You whisper one last goodnight to Hestia. And as you walk the garden path back toward town, sandals brushing the dust, you realize something rare. This was a good day. No danger, no drama, just order, calm, and the smell of warm stone under your feet, and not a single sponge stick in sight. This morning, you're standing ankle deep in clay. Literally. Because today's job is that of a pottery painter's apprentice, and before any brush touches a vase, someone's got to mix the slip and stomp out the air bubbles. That someone is you. You're in the outer courtyard of a ceramic workshop near the edge of Athens. Rows of unfinished amphorae, craters, and kylixes bask like sunbathing turtles drying on wooden racks. Chickens peck curiously at the pottery shards in the corner. A dog sleeps under the kiln, unfazed by the smell of ash and the occasional shout of, "Don't touch that, it's hot." You slosh around in a shallow trough of clay, smoothing it with your feet, rhythmically, like a dance no one wants to watch. The potter, your boss for the day, is a square-shouldered woman named Thaleia with forearms that could wrestle a tree. She watches you with narrowed eyes, not disapproving, just perpetually unimpressed. Mainstream fact? Athenian pottery was world-renowned, especially the red figure and black figure styles. These weren't just jugs and cups. They were art, storytelling tools, history in ceramic. Workshops had tight divisions of labor. Throwers, turners, painters, and apprentices like you who mostly fetched things and got dusty. Fringe tidbit? Some painters secretly signed their pots in obscure places, beneath handles, under the base, like an ancient artist's Easter egg. Others included hidden jokes, tiny doodles that only the most bored of archaeologists would ever notice. One kylix allegedly depicts a goat trying to play a flute. No one knows why. After mixing clay, your next task is gathering brushes. They're not made of fancy squirrel hair or fine bristles. These are reeds, horsehair, and the occasional salvaged feather bound with twine. You lay them out beside a fresh stack of cooled pottery and try not to sneeze on them. Then comes your favorite part, sketching the guideline figures. No, you're not doing the real painting. That's Thaleia's domain. But you're allowed to trace outlines on less important pieces. Today, it's a squat wine cup. You take a sharpened charcoal stick and draw a running hare. It looks like a confused dog. Still, Thaleia grunts in approval. "Better than yesterday's horse," she says. "You didn't draw a horse yesterday. That's a compliment." Inside the workshop, the heat is intense. The kiln glows like the belly of a sleepy volcano. Pottery rests in various stages, some still moist, others fired and awaiting polish. The walls are covered in hanging molds, painted samples, and one crooked relief of Dionysus that seems to wink at you whenever the light hits wrong. You carry finished pieces to the front table, where buyers will inspect them later. A merchant is already waiting, picking through amphorae like fruit. He sniffs one. You're not sure why. You whisper to Thaleia, "What happens if they don't sell?" She shrugs. "We break them, make better ones, or tell a new story." That's the secret of pottery. Each one tells a tale. Gods, heroes, parties, even the occasional embarrassing myth. Every curve carries a whisper of someone else's moment. Historians still argue whether pottery painters were seen as artists or craftsmen. Some earned fame. Exekius, for instance, was both painter and potter and signed many pieces with flair. Others worked anonymously, content to let the clay speak for itself. Later in the day, Thaleia lets you paint a test plate. Nothing grand, just a border of meanders, those interlocking patterns that look like a very patient labyrinth. You dip the brush, hold your breath, and it's crooked, very crooked. You grimace. She nods. Good. People like crooked things. Makes them feel superior. You smile. You're starting to like her. during the afternoon lull, someone brings figs and soft cheese wrapped in vine leaves. You sit under the eaves, eating with your clay-smeared hands, watching the sky shift from turquoise to gold. Dust motes float in the sunbeams like lazy bees. The merchant returns, this time with a younger companion, perhaps his son, perhaps just someone easily bored. The boy fingers a kylix and asks, "Why is this man dancing with a goat?" You shrug. "It's Dionysus. He gets weird." The boy laughs. The pot sells. As evening sets in, you help stack the finished wares, gently wrapping each in linen scraps before loading them onto a donkey cart. You hum a song Thalea taught you, a rhyme about cracked pots and cracked gods. Before you leave, she gives you a small fragment from a broken crater. It's painted with part of a chariot wheel and one heroic calf. "Your first fired work," she says. "Sort of." You tuck it into your belt pouch. You smell like clay. Your arms are sore. There's a dot of black glaze on your ear you won't notice until tomorrow. But you created something today, even if it's just a weird-looking hair on a crooked wine cup. You made a mark, and that's something not even the kiln can erase. Today's job begins with one hand on a rope and the other shielding your eyes from the sun. You're a flag bearer and message runner, stationed near the rocky ridge just outside a fortified Greek outpost. Not exactly dangerous, but not entirely relaxing either. Think of it as the ancient world's version of email, but with more stairs, more yelling, and significantly fewer delivery guarantees. You're handed a satchel, a set of colored linen pennants, and a smile from the supervisor that says, "Try not to get eaten by goats on the way up." And up you go. The path winds steeply between olive trees and stubborn shrubs, lined with sun-bleached stones and the occasional startled lizard. You climb carefully, your sandals kicking up little clouds of dust. The flag station at the top is a narrow plateau with a decent breeze, a shaded bench made of flat rock, and the kind of view philosophers probably wrote poems about. Mainstream fact: ancient Greek city-states used systems of visual signaling long before Rome formalized its cursus publicus. From torch relays to daylight flag codes, relay towers and high perches kept messages flowing across the jagged terrain. In times of war, this could mean the difference between being ready for a siege or being the siege. Fringe tidbit: some runners were trained to mimic bird calls as secret signals. Others swore that rubbing olive oil on their legs reduced muscle fatigue. One particularly stubborn messenger named Diodoros refused to wear sandals, claiming the gods guided his steps better barefoot. He also broke his toe twice, but remained confident. You reach the top and take a long drink from your clay flask. The view spreads wide: fields, rooftops, a snaking river, and in the far distance, another hilltop tower with its own tiny figure, waiting for your first flag of the day. You tie the red banner to the pole, 3 waves, then yellow, 1 wave. That means all clear, no ships sighted. You see a faint motion from the other tower. Response acknowledged. You grin. Ancient SMS success. The breeze is steady. The flags flap crisply. The air smells like rosemary and baked earth. A goat bleats somewhere nearby, but mercifully not close enough to chew on your flag ropes. There's not much else to do, which is the beauty of it. You sit, you watch, you think. The messenger's life is slow and observant. You're expected to be invisible unless needed, like a stone that only matters when it moves. Some days you send 3 messages, others, none. But always, you're watching. You doodle in the dirt with a stick, a spiral, a dolphin, a very bad portrait of your supervisor. You hum, you nap lightly. You wake to a bee hovering too close to your nose. Historians still argue whether these towers were military installations or had civic functions, like weather reporting or tax alerts. Some inscriptions suggest signal fires were used not just for invasions, but for wedding announcements and lost goat warnings. In the late afternoon, a runner arrives, a wiry youth from the valley, panting and grinning. He delivers a clay token with a carved sigil. Message inbound, prepare port flags. You nod, stand, and ready the blue pennant. 3 long waves, 2 short. The tower across the valley mirrors your signal. The runner offers you a plum, split and sticky from the trip. You thank him and eat slowly, juice dripping onto your wrist. You feel oddly important. Not because anyone will remember your name, but because someone somewhere is now slightly more informed than they were 5 minutes ago, because of you. That evening, as the sun dips behind the hills, you send your final flag of the day. Green, 1 wave. Station closed. You coil the ropes, fold the linen, and begin the careful descent. The stones feel warmer now. The breeze has cooled. Your muscles ache in a satisfying way. The ache of balance, of being part of a system no one fully sees but everyone depends on. At the bottom, your supervisor gives you a nod. No errors today. High praise in ancient Greek terms. You return to the outpost with your satchel slung over one shoulder and the last rays of sun painting golden lines on the ground. Later, you sit by the cooking fire, sharing a bowl of lentils and bread with the runners and guards. One man tells a story about a messenger who accidentally sent the signal for wedding feast instead of enemy ships, and the resulting confusion that led to the shortest, strangest battle in Aegean history. Everyone laughs. You do too. And as you curl up under your blanket near the fire, watching the stars blink above your still aching shoulders, you remember something. Some jobs aren't about speed, glory, or excitement. Some jobs are about the quiet connection between places, the rhythm of cloth on wind, and the satisfaction of a job done simply and done well. Even if you had to chase 3 goats off the signal pole to get there, you're holding a lyre and praying your fingers don't cramp, not because you're a bard or even particularly musical, but because today you're a temple musician, one of the more oddly soothing gigs in the Greek world, until the moment you play the wrong hymn for the wrong god and someone sends a chicken your way in protest. Your shift begins at the temple of Asclepius, god of healing. It's a calm place, fragrant with incense, quiet save for murmured prayers and the soft padding of acolytes arranging offerings. You've been assigned the mid-morning service, background music for the sick and the worried. Your instructions are simple. Keep the rhythm slow, the melodies sweet, and for the love of Apollo, no dancing tunes. You take your seat beside the entrance colonnade. The marble under you is cool. A basket of song scrolls sits at your side. You pluck a soft note, then another, and soon you're weaving together a melody as ancient as the columns around you. Mainstream fact? Music in temples wasn't just decoration, it was devotional. Every god had their own favored tones and instruments. Apollo adored the lyre. Dionysus leaned toward the aulos, a double reed pipe, and Demeter apparently tolerated nothing out of tune before breakfast. Rituals, feasts, and even healing ceremonies often included music to please divine ears. Fringe tidbit? Some temples believed certain notes could heal specific ailments. D minor for melancholy, C major for stubborn colds. There's even a scratched-out passage in one papyrus suggesting singing while rubbing olive oil into the temples promotes clarity. Sounds soothing, slippery, but soothing. As you play, a steady stream of visitors wanders through. Some bring offerings, bread, figs, carved tokens shaped like feet, hands, even eyes, hoping Asclepius might mend the ailment they represent. You spot a woman kneeling in prayer with one arm tucked in a sling, mouthing words you can't hear. You adjust your tune slightly, softening the notes. She closes her eyes. You don't know if it helps, but it feels like it might. Nearby, two young initiates attempt to sing along. You wince. Their voices are enthusiastic, but not calibrated. A priest gives them a look that could curdle goat milk. They quiet quickly. There's a break between rituals. You wander the peristyle garden, lyre still in hand, snacking on a honey cake left out for Hermes. It's crunchy, possibly his second favorite offering after sandal polish. You sit on a bench near a statue of Hygeia, Asclepius's daughter, goddess of cleanliness and health. She holds a serpent gently draped over her arm, a symbol of renewal. You quietly strum a tune that you're pretty sure isn't offensive to serpents. Historians still argue whether temple musicians were considered sacred functionaries or just tolerated freelancers with good timing. Some inscriptions name them, others ignore them entirely. But traces remain, notes scribbled into margins, musical fragments chiseled into stone, melodies woven into ritual. Later, you return to the main hall. A small procession enters, an old man on a stretcher, accompanied by relatives. They offer coins, oil, and a small bronze statuette of a liver. The priest nods solemnly. You begin playing again, this time slower, minor key, a melody meant to soothe more than celebrate. The music seems to ground the moment. There's pain here, yes, but there's also peace. You watch the man's breathing ease. Maybe it's the prayer, maybe it's the herbs, maybe it's just the sound of strings being plucked with care. You'll take it. By afternoon, your fingers ache. Not painfully, just enough to remind you you've been here, present, doing something delicate. You set the lyre aside, stretch your hands, and accept a cup of watered wine from one of the attendants. "Nice work," he says, nodding at the instrument. "No chickens today." You chuckle. Small victories. Another acolyte sets a wreath of bay leaves near your stool. Whether it's praise or part of the next offering, you're not sure. You take it anyway. Your final piece of the day is for the temple closing. A sunset hymn, played from the steps, meant to guide the day into rest. You sit cross-legged, breeze in your hair, the marble warm beneath you. The sky turns apricot and lilac above the columns. You play, slowly, carefully. And as the last note fades, the priest raises one hand in gratitude, not grand, not ceremonial, just enough. You pack up your lyre, wipe the dust from your sandals, and begin the walk home. On the way, you pass a group of children pretending to be gods and monsters in a courtyard. One holds a stick like a trident. Another demands a sacrifice of raisins. You smile. Some things never change. Back at your quarters, you set the lyre down with reverence. You smell like thyme and old strings. Your ears ring gently with remembered melodies. You sleep that night with a tune still echoing in your head. It's not one you know. Not exactly, but it feels like something divine. You blink awake to the sound of bees. Not many, just one or two lazily orbiting the fig tree above your head. But it's enough to remind you that today's task is one of the sweetest and strangest in the ancient Greek job market, temple beekeeper. Yes, really, not only does it exist, it's oddly prestigious in the right circles. You stretch your arms, careful not to jostle the small clay pot of wax beside you, and glance over at your hives. 5 domed skeps, woven from coils of straw and sealed with mud, nestled between a grove of thyme and a cluster of wildflowers. The bees are already busy, zooming in and out in a golden blur. Your job? Keep them happy. Keep them safe. Harvest their work with reverence. Mainstream fact: honey was sacred in ancient Greece, not just a sweetener, though it certainly was that, but also an offering, a medicine, and a core ingredient in kykeon, the barley-based ritual drink used in Eleusinian mystery rites. Temples kept bees for their wax, used in lamps and votive sculptures, and honey, used in libations and cakes for the gods. Fringe tidbit: some believed bees carried the souls of the dead. Others claimed temple bees only responded to music in the key of D, and that singing to them made the honey purer. There's even a carved warning in one shrine: speak not near the bees lest they carry your gossip to Hades. You hum softly, just in case. Your toolkit is simple: a veil woven from fine linen to protect your face, a small smoker crafted from bronze and leather, and a few smooth sticks to coax the comb loose without angering the whole hive. You approach gently, whispering apologies as you go. The bees are calm today. The time must be good this season. You remove the top of the first skep and peer inside. Glorious. The comb gleams in golden layers, sticky and fragrant. You use your stick to ease out a section, placing it gently in a basket lined with fig leaves. Bees crawl lazily across your hands, then fly off again, uninterested in fighting. You've worked hard for their trust. Back at the temple courtyard, an acolyte helps you prepare the honey for offering, a few drops into a ceramic bowl, a small cake shaped like a lamb, a whisper of thanks to Demeter or Artemis or whichever deity the temple honors today. Your temple isn't famous, not grand, but it's well-loved, clean, tended, full of tiny kindnesses that stack like combs, slowly, sweetly, until something holy forms. Historians still argue whether temple beekeepers were formal roles or informal honors given to devoted locals. Some clay tablets list honey quantities next to grain rations. Others treat bees like property. But fragments of songs remain, hymns to gold-winged gatherers and the sisters of the sacred sting. After midday, a priest stops by. He asks for a wax tablet, fresh and smooth, to inscribe a healing charm. You nod and fetch one from your stash, carved only hours earlier and cooled beside the fountain. He thanks you and hands you a fig in return. It's ripe, splits in your hand like a promise. Later, you check on the newer hive, the one that struggled last week. You find fresh comb, bright and wild. One of the bees lands on your arm, rests there a moment, then flits away. You don't move. You just smile. The sun lowers. The hives hum softly. The air smells like herbs and sun-warmed straw. You light a small oil lamp near the altar, its wick dipped in yesterday's wax. The flame catches with a pop. It flickers gently beside the offering bowl. As you pack up for the day, you take a sliver of honeycomb for yourself, just enough to taste. You chew slowly, letting the sweetness melt on your tongue. It tastes like summer, like sunlight, like patience made visible. Someone calls your name. You turn to find a child from the village holding out a small jar. She asks for wax to seal her family's wine jugs. You nod and spoon out a lump, wrapping it in cloth. She beams, drops a pebble into your basket as payment, a tiny token, worth more than a coin. You return to your grove, sit beneath the fig tree again, and listen. Not for commands, not for drums, not for arguments about Pluto and Plato, just for bees, working, buzzing, building little golden miracles one speck of nectar at a time. Tomorrow, the hives may swarm, a skep may collapse, a priest might demand twice the wax with half the patience. But for tonight, you're a keeper of sweetness, a steward of wings, a reminder that not every sacred task involves blood, war, or fire. Some just need gentle hands and quiet, and maybe a song in D. You wake up, for once, not to bells or bees or barking priests, but to the smell of freshly baked bread, a rare scent in the chaos of ancient Greek life, and rarer still when it wafts directly from your own place of work. Because today, your job isn't rowing, praying, or scraping slime off temple floors. Today, you are a festival bread maker. More specifically, you're one of the lucky, or unlucky, depending on your tolerance for heat and shouting, souls chosen to prepare pelenoi, ritual cakes baked for the upcoming festival of Artemis. You sit cross-legged in a smoky side chamber of the local sanctuary. It's barely dawn, and the ovens have already been roaring for an hour. Not fancy ovens, mind you, stone pits with dome-shaped lids and fire glowing beneath. The heat pulses through your knees like a warning. Your hands are dusted in barley flour. You're kneading dough the old-fashioned way, with your forearms, your elbows, occasionally your forehead when concentration lapses. Beside you, a large tray of molds waits, some round, some shaped like goats, doves, or crescent moons. Mainstream fact: festivals in ancient Greece weren't just prayers and pageantry, they were full-blown community efforts. Bakers, singers, dancers, torchbearers, all had roles to play. Certain breads and cakes were considered sacred offerings. Pelenoi for Artemis, placus with honey for Demeter, and sesame-studded pyramus triangles for Dionysus, possibly after a few too many amphorae of his finest. Fringe tidbit? Some temples had official bread priests, not because they were especially holy, but because they knew how not to burn the goat-shaped loaf. Also, certain breads were marked with secret symbols before baking. If your mark didn't bake through evenly, it was considered a bad omen. You press yours extra deep, just in case. The woman to your left grunts approvingly. Her name's Thelxinoe, which apparently means enchanting thought, though she mostly swears like a dock worker and kneads like she's trying to start a revolution. "You're folding it wrong," she mutters. "The goddess likes layers." You nod, adjusting your technique. Better layered than cursed. You carry the shaped dough to the ovens, shield your face from the heat, and slide the trays inside using a long wooden paddle. The fire snaps. One cake bubbles over slightly. Thelxinoe curses again. Someone starts humming a festival chant, half prayer, half kitchen tune. Others join in, low and rhythmic, voices overlapping with the sizzle of oil and the slap of dough against table. It sounds like work, but it feels like ritual. Historians still argue whether these baking sessions were viewed as sacred acts or just preparatory chores. Some inscriptions elevate bread makers to keepers of flame and grain. Others list them below torchbearers and just above poultry handlers. But the scent of warm barley and honey has a way of making you feel essential. By midday, the breads are ready. You carry trays to the temple courtyard, now decorated with garlands of myrtle and ivy. A procession begins. Girls in white tunics scatter flower petals. Musicians play a double flute. And the high priestess leads the offering, placing each bread on the altar with deliberate care. Your goat-shaped loaf sits right at the edge. Not center, not hidden, just visible enough to feel like a small triumph. Later, during the feast, leftovers are distributed to the crowd. Children dive for the sweet ones. Elders chew the crustier offerings with solemn dedication. One boy grabs your bread, bites into the snout, and gives a thumbs up with his free hand. Success. You retire to the temple's shady garden where others are already napping beneath olive trees. Thelxinoe joins you, her apron dusted in flour, her hands still twitching as if they're folding invisible dough. "Well," she says, "no fires, no curses, no screaming gods, We'll call that a win. You nod. Your arms ache. Your back protests. But your heart? It's humming. You lie on the grass and watch dappled light dance through the leaves. Somewhere, bees buzz softly. Birds chirp. The air smells like roasted barley and mint. You think about the tiny miracle of bread. How grain, water, and heat become something sacred. How hands like yours, crusted in flour and cracked from work, can make offerings to immortals, and maybe, just maybe, be noticed. Before sleep takes you, you remember something a wandering philosopher once said in the Agora: "The gods do not eat bread, but they do remember who bakes it." You smile. Let them remember. You wake up late, which is a novelty in itself. No drum beats, no bells, no flaming goats. Just a soft shaft of sunlight poking through the shutters and the muted sounds of distant sandals on stone. You're not due anywhere urgent today. No bees to calm, no dough to fold. Just a single assignment from the magistrate's office. Spend the day sitting at the fountain. Yes, that's your job. You are a fountain scribe. Ancient Greece, being the overachiever of the classical world, had a job for almost everything, and public fountains, especially in larger city-states like Athens, needed guardians. Scribes were posted nearby to log disputes over water usage, monitor rationing during drought, and, more often than not, scribble gossip disguised as civic commentary. Mainstream fact: public fountains were a cornerstone of Greek city life. They weren't just for filling jugs. They were social hubs, message boards, and centers of informal trade. Some even served as ad hoc courts when official buildings were closed. Fringe tidbit: one archaeological tablet from Delphi mentions a scribe fined for offering his own opinions too loudly while seated near sacred plumbing. Which, honestly, feels relatable. You arrive mid-morning, tunic crisp, stylus polished, a small writing tablet tucked under one arm. The fountain burbles cheerfully, shaded by a fig tree and surrounded by low benches. There's already a line of citizens, mostly women, balancing clay jugs, and elderly men pretending to need water while clearly here to swap news. You take your seat, adjust your sandals, begin the ancient art of looking very official while doing as little as possible. First comes a merchant's wife, complaining that her neighbor takes more than his fair share during festival weeks. You nod sympathetically. Scratch a few notes onto your wax tablet, mostly doodles. Next, a child trying to sell fish-shaped tokens he carved from leftover bread. You confiscate one for investigation. Then, two elders argue about whether the water pressure is lower this year. You write, "Pressure is watery." The sun rises higher. The plaza warms. Doves flutter onto the fountain edge. Someone offers you a fig in exchange for favorable water rights. You decline, then accept. Purely ceremonial, of course. A city runner arrives mid-afternoon with an official inquiry scroll. Have any strangers been spotted loitering by the sacred pipe? You squint. There's a man napping on the far bench, hat over his face, possibly dreaming of wine or philosophy. You write, "No loiterers." One unconscious optimist. Historians still argue whether public scribes were authorities or glorified secretaries. Some say they were trusted civic recorders. Others joke they were just the city's earliest form of neighborhood moderators, minus the anonymity and plus a tunic. You spend the remainder of the day jotting minor observations. Bird stole olive from woman's basket. No injuries. Jug cracked upon impact. Owner blamed weather. Young man reciting poetry to water, possibly sincere. There's something oddly peaceful about it all. The trickling of the fountain, the gentle buzz of conversation, the soft rhythm of stylus against wax. You stretch your legs, eat the confiscated breadfish, Contemplate writing a very dramatic entry just to spice up the archives. Unexplained rainbow appeared at the 14th hour. Interpretation pending. Then you hear a commotion. Not dramatic, just noisy. A man insists he saw a nymph near the fountain at dawn, claims she shimmered like mist and vanished with his lucky coin. Another woman laughs too loudly and says the nymph must have taken his common sense too. You record both statements. Your tablet is now a mosaic of fact and fiction. You're fine with that. By evening, the crowd thins. You stretch your back. Stand slowly. Your legs are stiff from stillness. Your eyes slightly blurred from squinting at exaggerated complaints. But your spirit, remarkably calm. You close your tablet, pack your writing kit, take one last sip from the fountain yourself. The water is cold and perfect. As you walk away, a passing child asks what you do all day. You shrug and say, "I listen." He nods solemnly, then runs off to argue with a pigeon. You smile. There are louder jobs, busier ones. But this was a day made of sunlight, scribbles, and water, and you were exactly where you needed to be. Today your job is a bit theatrical, literally. Because you, dear listener, have found yourself appointed as an understudy for a sacred chorus. Don't panic. You're not the lead. You're not the soloist. You're one of the extras, a backup dancer in linen and leather sandals, a moving part in a very serious religious play staged at the Dionysia, a festival of drama, devotion, and if we're being honest, moderate wine-fueled chaos. Hey guys, tonight we don't just stroll through ancient Greece, we perform it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand backstage, or what counts as backstage, in a semicircular amphitheater carved into a hillside. The stone beneath your feet is warm from the sun, and the smell of crushed thyme and dust floats up with the breeze. The city stretches behind you. In front, 1,000 Athenian eyes, watching, judging, squinting. But let's rewind a little. This job wasn't exactly something you applied for. Most likely your name got pulled in a civic lottery, or maybe your uncle bribed someone to get you involved as character building. Either way, you've been issued a mask, a robe, and very minimal direction. Something about move left if the flute sounds like we're sad. Mainstream fact. The ancient Greeks took their theater seriously. Performances were state-sponsored, and chorus members were considered semi-sacred. Even if all you did was chant and gesture rhythmically in unison while wearing a frown that could be seen from 300 feet away. Fringe tidbit? Some chorus masks had tiny built-in mouth funnels to help project your voice, or more commonly, catch your spit before it hit the guy in front of you. You're playing a mournful villager today. Your costume, a gray wool tunic, itchy, a rope belt, loose, and a mask that smells like it's been passed down through 12 generations of sweaty tragedians. The play? Something about divine punishment, forbidden love, or an inconvenient oracle. Honestly, no one in the chorus fully knows. Your job is to sway side to side, echo the lead actor's emotions, and shout, "Alas," at appropriate moments. You've practiced for a week, and by practice, we mean shouting in rhythm while avoiding splinters from the stage platform. Your group leader, a man named Epicles with a voice like a cracked harp, insists timing is everything. If you cry too early, he tells you, it becomes comedy. Your first cue approaches. The flute wails, You shuffle forward, raise your arms, chant, "Woe to the house of Thebes." Nailed it. Well, not nailed, exactly. More like gently tapped with a soft hammer. But no one hisses, so you take that as a win. The play continues. You shuffle, you sway, you wail in measured despair. And somewhere in the middle of it all, sweat dripping, chorus mask fogging, you catch a glimpse of the audience. They're captivated. A woman in the front row bites her lip. A child mimics your gestures. An older man wipes a tear, possibly dust, but you'll claim it anyway. Historians still argue whether chorus members understood their symbolic weight or just saw it as a way to get out of farming for a few days. Some claim their synchronized movement mirrored civic harmony. Others say it was the ancient version of background music, only louder and occasionally off-key. Your scene ends. You retreat to the side, heart pounding, legs sore from bent knee shuffling. Epicles gives a curt nod. Could have been worse. You beam. After the performance, you help gather costumes, carefully remove your mask, drink from a shared water skin. Someone offers figs dipped in honey. You accept with both hands. The sun begins to set. The crowd disperses. The amphitheater grows quiet. You sit on the edge of the stage, swinging your legs, watching shadows stretch across the marble. The scent of rosemary wafts in from the hills. Your feet ache. Your throat is dry. But your spirit? It hums. You helped tell a story today. A story that mattered. Even if you were mostly villager number 5, you helped stir something ancient in strangers' hearts. You were part of a rhythm older than history, a harmony woven into time. And that, you think, is worth an encore. Your new assignment is, by all accounts, the ultimate dream gig in ancient Greece. Not heroic, not dangerous, not even particularly sweaty. You, friend, are now the keeper of the olive press. Yes, really. You spend your day surrounded by baskets of ripe, glistening olives, cool stone basins, and long, lazy shadows cast by sun-bleached awnings. If jobs had a scent, yours would be a mix of crushed fruit, warm straw, and lazy afternoon naps. And let's be clear, this isn't just any olive press. It's the civic press attached to a modest landholding on the edge of the town, semi-public, semi-private, semi-likely to be commandeered during festival seasons. Your job? Monitor the pressing, prevent theft, and keep the amphora labeled. That's it. You arrive in the morning. The press sits low to the ground, an enormous round stone basin with a central pillar, fitted with a heavy wooden beam. The olives are poured in, crushed under weight and pressure, slowly releasing that rich golden liquid the gods themselves were rumored to hoard. Mainstream fact: olive oil was the lifeblood of the ancient Greek economy, used for cooking, lighting, religious ceremonies, skin care, and sometimes, awkwardly, as a prize for athletic competitions. Athletes were known to rub themselves down with it, scrape it off, and sell it. Entrepreneurial sweat, if you will. Fringe tidbit? One rural village reportedly used olive oil to polish statues of minor household gods, believing it helped them see mischief more clearly. Whether that worked is, of course, still debatable. This morning, your first batch is courtesy of an elderly farmer named Menandros. He arrives with 2 sons, 3 donkeys, and 5 baskets of olives. The donkeys do most of the work. The sons complain. Menandros just winks at you and says, "Don't trust a fruit that bruises too easily. That goes for people too." You help them dump the olives into the hopper. The press creaks to life. The beam groans. The oil begins to trickle. You sit nearby with your wax tablet making notes. Not urgent ones, just volume estimates, pressing times, and the occasional sketch of a particularly round olive. A few neighborhood children linger nearby, staring at the press like it's a temple. One offers you a carved wooden olive. You trade a fig pit for it. Fair deal. The sun climbs higher. Menandros dozes beneath a fig tree. The donkeys munch hay like philosophers contemplating lunch. You get up occasionally to inspect the stream of oil. Adjust a stopper. Tighten a rope. Wipe your hands on a cloth that has long since given up trying to be clean. The whole process is slow, rhythmic, meditative. Historians still argue whether the olive press workers were seen as low-status laborers or respected craftsmen. Some records suggest temple presses were considered semi-holy, guarded with prayers and overseen by priests. Others point out that most village presses doubled as gossip hubs, more social than sacred. In your case, it's more like being the barista of the ancient world. People come, they wait, they talk, they nod solemnly while inspecting their oil's color like it's vintage wine. In the afternoon, a new batch arrives, late-season olives, darker and richer. The owner insists he can smell the difference. You nod thoughtfully and say, "Ah, the mid-harvest bouquet." He beams. No idea if that means anything, but he believes you. Later, someone spills a jar. Oil slicks across the stone floor. You mop it with straw and muttered prayers. A nearby cat licks the residue, then falls asleep on your sandal. You don't move. That's the rule. If a cat sleeps on you during pressing hours, you're blessed until sundown. Probably. As evening nears, you ladle the oil into clay amphorae, seal them with wax, and etch a few crooked sigils on the sides, each one a tiny record of the day's slow, golden labor. You step back, wipe your brow. The sun filters through the press's lattice roof, painting your tunic with amber stripes. You stretch, bones creaking like old vines. Your hands are slick but warm. Your feet ache but happily so. This job? It isn't thrilling. It doesn't make great stories. But it's quiet, steady, generous, like the olive tree itself. And as the last rays of light drip across the jars, you whisper a thanks to Athena, not just for the olives, but for the peace that came with them. And just when you think you've sampled all the gentler occupations ancient Greece has to offer, your final task is handed to you, temple candle trimmer. Yes, that's right. You are now officially in charge of wick maintenance in one of the lesser shrines of Artemis, which means you're not exactly brushing elbows with high priests or overseeing oracles, but you are ensuring that the eternal flame stays politely presentable. You report to the temple just after dawn, the marble still cold beneath your feet. The shrine itself is modest. Whitewashed walls, 3 columns, a bronze bowl of sacred water, and a row of ever-burning lamps tucked in a niche behind the altar. The scent here is divine: wax, thyme, aged stone, and faintly, bees. That's the beeswax, of course. You know that now. You carry a box of tools, snips for trimming, a copper scoop for drippings, a small cloth for polishing, and the faintest sense of importance. After all, if a lamp goes out, someone's going to say it's a bad omen. Better to keep the wicks in line than risk divine side-eye from Artemis herself. Mainstream fact? Greek temples were maintained daily by a small crew of assistants and caretakers, often slaves, sometimes paid attendants, whose job it was to tidy altars, relight lamps, prepare offerings, and occasionally shoo away goats. Fringe tidbit? In certain rural shrines, it was believed that a flame that sputtered when trimmed was actually whispering a warning. So your candle snipping skills doubled as spiritual diagnostics. Basically, ancient Greek flame ASMR. You kneel before the first lamp, snip, flick, wipe, It's oddly soothing, this task. Each wick glows a little more evenly after your care. The wax hums with warmth beneath your fingers. You hum back, unconsciously, just a few notes of an old lullaby. Outside, the day begins to hum too. Birds call, carts rattle past, and a temple cat slinks in and curls beside the altar. She watches your every move like a supervisor. You pass inspection. You've only just finished the second lamp when an older attendant named Menno arrives. He nods to you and begins dusting the statue's feet with a bundle of sage. "Flame's looking clean today," he mutters. "Didn't shriek once." You take that as a compliment. The temple is quiet for most of the morning. A widow arrives to leave bread. A young boy comes in and prays silently, eyes squeezed shut, lips whispering. You step back and let the sacred hush hold the space. Historians still argue whether these lesser temple roles were viewed as pious service or just handy ways to pass quiet lives under holy roofs. Some accounts treat lamplighters as deeply respected. Others barely mention them, lost in the footnotes between generals and poets. But here, today, in this little shrine under soft sunbeams, you feel important. You light a fresh taper for the afternoon ceremony. Carry it to the outer hall. Place it in a clay basin. Watch the flame catch, tiny, defiant, alive. Your hands smell like wax and olive oil. Your tunic is dusted in soot. You've earned maybe a few obols for your trouble. And still, your spirit feels lighter than it did during the rowing, the fire, the mock battles, or the sponge stick incidents. You were still, you were useful, you were quiet and necessary. And then, at last, your work is done. You place the tools back in their box, bow to the altar, slip out the side door. Outside, the breeze greets you. Not too strong, not too warm. Just a polite kiss on the face from a job well done. As the temple slips behind you, you carry no trophies, no medallions. Just the memory of soft light and sacred space, the slow rhythm of trimming flame, the feeling of being small but not forgotten. And now it's time to rest. You lie back beneath an olive tree, warm stone at your back, the sky pale blue and wide above you. A cicada drones in the distance, slow and sleepy, the kind of sound that seems to wrap around your breath and pull it deeper, slower, calmer. Your eyes grow heavy. You think back to every strange and restful job you tried this week. Temple cleaner, sandal polisher, feast guest, wine judge, parade extra, scribbler of receipts, duster of statues, chanter of verses, server of snacks, and not once did anyone expect you to win a war, slay a monster, or invent democracy from scratch. Instead, you learned how ancient Greece survived not just on brilliance and battle, but on rhythm, on care, on the people who made the lights flicker and the olives shine and the figs stay sweet. You smile, just a little, because you know now that history isn't just the grand stuff. It's the quiet stuff, too. You stretch one last time, feeling the ache in your limbs soften like clay in the sun. And as you drift towards sleep, you whisper a promise to remember this peace, this pace, this strange little week of jobs. Because not all heroes carry swords. Some carry wax snippers, some carry fig pits, and some carry memories of perfect naps on polished stone beneath sleepy skies. Good night.